The story I'm about to tell you isn't something you'd hear in a campfire ghost tale or read in a fiction book. It's something that happened not far from where I live, something that has stayed with me, haunting the quiet moments when my thoughts drift. People need to know, even if they'll never believe me. It was about a year ago, one of those cold, late autumn evenings just after the last leaves had fallen, when the world felt dead and colorless. My friend, Brian, had been missing for 3 days. He wasn't someone who'd just vanish. He had a stable job, a girlfriend, everything that gave him reason to stay. But 3 days had passed, and he hadn't shown up at work, hadn't answered his phone. I knew something was wrong. I was the one who found his car, abandoned by a dirt road near a thick forest reserve about 30 minutes from the city. The police had searched the area, but they wrote it off after they found nothing unusual, just another adult who probably wanted a break from his life. But I knew Brian. I knew he wasn't the type to take off without telling anyone. So I went back on my own. I went to the forest, alone, when everyone else had given up. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind of quiet you find when there's no wind, but a deeper silence. No rustling leaves, no chirping birds, nothing. It was as if the forest held its breath. The deeper I went, the more I felt it. A weight, a sense that I was somewhere I shouldn't be. I was a few hundred yards in when I found something. A scarf tangled in a bush. It was Brian's girlfriend's scarf. She had mentioned he borrowed it, the only piece of him she'd had left. I picked it up, and that's when I heard it. A voice. Faint, but unmistakable. It was Brian's voice, calling my name. Tom. It sounded wrong, though, distorted, almost mechanical, like it echoed from a broken speaker. But it was him. I know my best friend's voice. I shouted back, but there was no answer, just that silence swallowing my words. I pushed on, moving faster, my flashlight trembling as I scanned the trees. I heard it again. Tom. Closer this time, but coming from all directions at once, like the forest itself was speaking to me. My skin prickled and the hairs on my arms stood on end. Something was very wrong. I don't know how to describe it, but it felt like I was being watched, not by a person, but by the forest itself. And then I saw it. In a clearing up ahead, there was Brian. Or at least, it looked like him. He was standing there, perfectly still, facing away from me. I called his name, but he didn't move. I stepped closer, and that's when I realized he wasn't standing. His feet were a good foot above the ground, dangling, like he was being held up by something invisible. His head turned slowly, unnaturally, until his eyes met mine. They were empty, black, like twin voids, and his mouth twisted into a smile that wasn't his. It was too wide, the kind of smile that split your face into something monstrous. I backed away, my instincts screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. The air around me felt thick, like it was pushing in from all sides. And then, from behind him, figures began to emerge. They looked human, but their faces were blurred, like they were underwater, their limbs jerking in unnatural motions as they crept toward me. Brian's voice, no, that thing, spoke again. But it wasn't my name this time. It was laughter. Hollow, echoing laughter that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I don't remember how I got out. The next thing I knew, I was stumbling out of the forest, my hands scraped and my legs burning. I ran until I reached the road, collapsing by Brian's abandoned car. The police found me an hour later, babbling and shaking. They never found Brian. They said he probably ran off, made a new life somewhere else. But I know better. I saw what he became, what took him. I've never gone back to that forest. And I know I never will. Because sometimes, in the dead of night, when everything is quiet, I can still hear it. His voice calling my name, with that laughter lurking just behind it.